Obviously, the topic of discussion is how to effectively declutter any space. For most of you, downsizing isn't the issue. You're already here, so obviously you have downsized. But a lot of times I do hear from residents that, yeah, sure, that they have a lot of clutter, a lot of stuff, and they don't know where to start or what to do with it. And clutter can have a significant impact on our mental and emotional well-being, especially as we age. Reducing this clutter can also help us reduce anxiety and stress that we may be feeling. And just creating that organized living space can help us clean and maintain that area better. Not to mention, clutter can also become a safety issue, right? Things in our way could be a falling risk. So there's a lot of benefits from decluttering. And with that, I'm going to hand it over. I want to thank Anston Home Transition Solutions for coming out, and I'm going to hand it over to Andrew.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
How are you? So yeah, we're going to talk about a fun topic, like everybody knows, how to go and start decluttering things, downsizing stuff, because everybody collects stuff, even when you already moved into a different space, you still have other things you have to go through.
Throwing it away,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's an option. We
It
can
is
throw it
an
away.
option.
But, so,
Thank you.
so no problem. So we'll just kind of walk through who we are really quick. We're Anston Home Transition Solutions. We help people basically relieve stress from doing things that hinder them. We relocate people, but we work with seniors and their families. We do assessments for them if they're going to be moving into a smaller space or just decluttering in general. Some of our services are up here on the board. We do downsizing, moving. Hello. Come on in. We do real estate.
Okay.
We do home modifications. Basically, we have storage.
Take your time.
Yep. Basically, anything you need as far as the transition goes. If you're having any kind of going from one space to another space, or just in general, just trying to work on a space in your current home. You know, we do those things. And the biggest thing on this list is stress relief, because that's what we're here for. We're problem solvers. So let's go into downsizing. So when we talk about downsizing, it probably makes you feel like this. It may also make you feel like this. But a lot of times, you know, as alluded to earlier, we also kind of feel like this. So it creates a little bit of anxiety and worry. So when we talk about downsizing, because it can have a lot of meanings, right? So we talk about things like keeping only the essential items. We talk about removing clutter that holds us down, and basically taking back control of our lives. So if you're taking notes, that's fine. I could also send you a copy of this presentation. It's pretty easy to send to people, so just in case, go a little fast. But downsizing typically is a situation you're going from one space that's bigger to a smaller space. But it could also be downsizing a room in your home. But how do we get to this point? So how many people here have kids? How many of your kids want your stuff? Right?
Not many.
Like, you know, my kids don't want my stuff, right? That happens. And like, stuff like your china, the flatware, stuff like this, and this nice display over here, they don't want, right? They just don't want it anymore. And what happens is when they don't want our stuff, we end up collecting more stuff, and then we end up like this.
Oh, no. Doesn't look quite that.
Some cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But the result of having to downsize something like that, you probably feel like you become part of it, right? Start living in it. Or sleeping in it, yeah. And then the end result of having to downsize is like this. You really don't want to have to think about this, right? You kind of
That's true.
it's very stressful. So we'll talk about some emotions that we see commonly with downsizing. Some we touched upon. We have things that are sentimental. How many people have sentimental items that they hang on to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty common. You go through anxiety. And there's also loss of control because we don't know how to get started. And then what we find though, as we go through getting rid of things and decluttering things, we start to see people get happier because they get a sense of that, they start calming down, they get back that sense of control. So I want to kind of walk through a little personality test. So how many people in here are sentimentalists? Someone that has a deep connection with their stuff, right? or certain items, doesn't have to be everything.
Certain items, yeah.
What about an evader? They don't like clutter, but they just deal with it. Right? Yeah. And everybody could be a couple different types. How about materialist? This is me. Hate to see things wasted, especially if it's expensive or pricey.
Say yes to all those things.
Yeah. What about someone, have you grown up with some kind of restrictions when you were a child? Maybe you had family that was in the Great Depression, they hang on to things, they don't wanna let go of things. You know, I had a grandfather who had a pool, and the pool wasn't for swimming, it was for drinking water. That's why he wanted it. So, it's just how they grew up. What about the high achiever? They don't think twice about letting something go, but they have a lot of collectibles. They may have some awards, they may have nice suits, things of that nature. So, we'll do a little test real quick. How does this make you feel? Early reactions, I can tell, right? What about this?
Need more hangers.
Wow.
That's what it looks like sometimes when I look at it.
Mhm.
It's not that bad.
Correct.
But it looks
But
that
it can be
way.
like that, yes. So, we talk about having too much stuff. How many of you have junk drawers? I mean, I think everybody has a junk drawer in their house or home or space, right? So when you have too much clutter, what that does is it creates stress, obviously. It goes and it creates a burden on everybody else, because if you're stressed, then the person around you is stressed. They feel that. Like if I'm not having a good day, my kids know I'm not having a good day, they get a little stressed. And it also creates more expenses and time. How many times you put something in that drawer, you can't find it, you go buy it again. And you take time and money to go pay for those things. So why do we want to downsize? Well, we want to kind of open up that space in our house. We want to remove that clutter and we want to start reducing our stress. But downsizing is hard. We don't know how to get started sometimes. So things that make it difficult for us is, you know, as we get older, physical tasks get harder. We talk about things like not having any help. Some of us don't have kids nearby. If they do, they don't want to help anyway. So, and then we also have basically the emotions get in the way that we talked about. And the other part is there's not a lot of motivation to get started, especially if it's a lot to do. And the last part would be mindset. That's kind of everything that goes around downsizing. Right? So the problem is, we see something like this, as you mentioned before, when in reality, sometimes it's only like this. So let's go into some simple steps we can kind of start to downsize today, and we'll go through some tips after this as well. So some of the stuff we want to do is we want to figure out what we're doing. We want to assess our needs. That's always step one. So we want to keep it simple. We want to understand that, you know, deep down, this is what we want to start doing. We want to start downsizing. We want to start this process. So you have to ask yourself, what do I want and what's holding me back from getting started? Why am I not starting? So look at the bigger picture, like, are you gonna be like moving, or are you looking just to clean a space in your room? Take a tour of your house, this is always fun to do, or your home. Take pictures to make a list of those items each room, and be intentional about this. So, step two is now we wanna create a little plan. Anybody here like doing to-do lists? I like to-do lists, right? So, what we'll do in that situation is we'll create a plan and keep it simple, right? We want to go room by room, category by category. If you have books or clothing or dishes, you can kind of categorize these things. Find someone to keep you in check and keep you accountable. And then create small tasks, like, you know, spend maybe 10 minutes working on this each day. You don't have to spend an hour or 2 hours. Small tasks, they create the wins, the most wins. And then stay focused, that's the biggest part. You know, and then the other part is rewarding yourself. If you work for 10 or 15 minutes on something, treat yourself to something you like to do, whether it's a cup of coffee or something, yes?
To interrupt you again.
Yeah.
At least for me, that's the hardest part, is limiting, like if I start doing something, I
Yeah.
feel as if I have to do it all when
Right.
that one function.
Exactly.
I can't stop because then I don't know where I am. So how do you do that? How
Yeah.
do you?
You have to create a point, like break it down into smaller pieces, which is part of when you go through this. just to get started, maybe put a timer on somewhere to go off at a certain time, and then you can block where you left off somehow, whether it's, you know, a sticker or something to say, okay, left off here, and then you can come back to it when you've had a little break. And then the other part of this is to keep going, right? Once you get started, you don't wanna stop, because you lose that momentum, right? And then step 3 is the hardest part, is getting started, right? We wanna go through the plan we just put together, share progress. If you like to write in a journal or write something down, write about what you did. It'll make you feel better if you get it out on paper. And then also focus on that current task that you're working on. If it's 10 minutes, stay focused for 10 minutes and work on everything as best you can. So some of the tips that we go through. So we talk about taking an inventory of what you have, going one room at a time, looking at common clutter areas that are in your home. You know, maybe kitchen items, you have a lot of kitchen items you don't use anymore, you can start going through those. Keep undamaged items, that's important. Anything that's broken, shouldn't be hanging on to. Start in places you don't use regularly, so if you have a room you're not always going into, or a space in your house you're not always going to, like we'll mention things like your attic space and things like that in that nature, but, or garage space, but these are kind of places you should be starting, things you don't always see. And then reduce paperwork. You only need, I think it's 7 years of tax returns, you don't need more than that. Credit card statements, things like that, you can get rid of, start shredding. And then things you can get rid of today. If you have any expired food, most people do in their refrigerator. Unused clothing, games, electronics, kitchen gadgets, chipped and cracked items, things you've been meaning to fix, you get that one a lot. Pens that no longer work. You know, we have things like takeout menus, it's a common one. Luggage and suitcases we don't use anymore. Worn out linens, expired medications like and shampoos. Books, we see a lot of books, magazines. Old jewelry you don't wear anymore. Maybe some old plastic containers that are just worn out, you shouldn't be using them. And old paperwork obviously is another one. And now, we talk about decluttering, making it more of a habit. Every week, we should be kind of looking at things that can gain clutter, like our cabinet, our countertops, anything that can, like your refrigerator, areas in your space that you may commonly put a bunch of things when you walk in the home. And then every month, we would look at pantries, or anything that's in a hobby room in our home, or junk drawers is good for this. Bathroom cabinets tend to get cluttered after a while, so every month we should be going through that and just taking a little time to go through those items. And then every year, closets that we don't go into a lot, paperwork, toys that are for the grandkids, items under the sink, the garage is a good space for this every year, if you have a home in that nature. And then technology works here well, too. So if you have basically pictures, our phones are pretty good these days, they take pictures of things, it takes up too much space, we can take a picture of something. You can basically scan our letters and documents, we have services that come and take digital copies of your photo albums, anything you may have, like CDs, cassettes, those things can go away now, there's a lot more digital formats out there. And then some questions to kind of start asking as you do this. Have you used something in the past 6 months? Does it still work? That's always a fun one. Do you have a place for it? So do you need it? Is it gonna fit somewhere else? Does it hold any sentimental value, which we've already discussed? Would you want a loved one to have it? And then some rules of thumb, if you haven't used something that's not seasonal in the past 6 months, you can get rid of it. If you've outgrown it, whether it's a hobby or it's clothing, you can donate it. If it doesn't bring you joy, then you can also get rid of it. That's kind of a Marie Kondo method. And then the other thing is you want to be ruthless about this. You want to just keep going. You don't want to just stop. So some things we'll do with clients that we work with, go room by room, you sticker things, you can divide your stuff into different categories, like keeping things, trashing things, donating and selling.